Innovation has long been the poster child of inclusion and diversity strategies. And the research linking increased inclusion and diversity with greater innovation is well established. The COVID-19 crisis amplified the importance of innovation in unprecedented ways. In this age of widespread disruption, companies must innovate continuously, creating new markets, experiences, products, and services. Companies that do not represent their customer base and do not include diverse perspectives, especially in decision-making seats, will be left behind. And with an estimated 600,000 tech vacancies in the UK, a figure predicted to reach 1 million in 2020, it is clear we are not attracting and including all the available talent. This is costing the UK economy an estimated £63 billion per year in lost additional GDP. But at the Tech Talent Charter, we have had enough of just talking about the problem. The TTC was created because solving the diversity problem in tech requires a collective effort across companies and sectors. Our mission is to connect the dots, not to reinvent the wheel. We do that by facilitating collaboration across organizations and across sectors, by curating the best practice insights to support companies improve their D&I strategies. We manage a unique directory of D&I initiatives to help members connect in the space. We produce annual benchmarking data to help members track their progress, and we spotlight the work of signatories to improve their employer brand. Membership is free, and there's no hidden agenda. So what are you waiting for? Join hundreds of other organizations and become a signatory to the TTC. Become part of the solution.
Super. So, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Debbie Forster. I am the CEO of the Tech Talent Charter. I'm delighted to have you here for our virtual event. This is our 4th virtual event. You saw pictures from the video of the old days when we could do face-to-face events. We've pivoted this with real success into a virtual event, but the premise will be the same. This is going to be about focusing on what's practical, not talking about the problem. And this is about no one on this call, no one on our panel is pretending that they have all of the answers. Quite the opposite. It is about sharing what's working and not working, because the great thing about the charter is that we've learned no one has to start completely from scratch. What you can do is learn from others in the space. That's not treated like a competitive secret. It is about really looking at how we can collaborate in the space. So I have a range of people on the panel that give us a range of experience, whether that is as a training provider that's worked with big companies and small companies, to an SME, to someone who's been through a retraining program. Today, we need to hear from you throughout the piece, and we want to hear what's happening within your own company. If I say to you, she says, hopefully sharing her screen, and it all works well. Let me share. When we talk about alternative routes into tech, this is actually very much part of what we focus on. We have always focused on action, not talk. And what you do in being part of the Tech Talent Charter is that chance to collaborate and learn. It's a chance to use our toolkit. It's a chance to raise your profile within the space, and a chance to see how you compare, how you measure up. We've been saying now for about a year, in looking across what we see, if you really want to move the dial, if you're really determined to create great talent and build diverse, inclusive teams, there are some game-changing things you could think about. One of those is looking at flexible and remote working. The companies that already realized that were ahead of the game when we moved into this COVID world of ours. It's about thinking about meaningful part-time job shares. It's about looking at how can we create returners programs and career conversion space. And those last two things are vitally important. And for any company, it can be game changing. Pre-COVID, we already knew that there were 2 million women currently inactive because of caring commitments. 76% of them want to retrain. We also did a national survey, one of our partners, HP, and they found, looking across the working age women, 70% said they'd be interested in jobs in the tech sector. 45% of them said they'd be willing to retrain. So this is a vast talent pool, and it's one that's waiting to be discovered. If you look in our open playbook, you will see you don't have to start from scratch. There is a process that every company can work their way through to make returning programs and returners programs successful in your company. Today, we're going to focus on two key parts, and that's really about the design of the program and how we get people on it. Those are two really important parts that make or break a program. So in thinking about that, I have an amazing panel to have join us. The hardest question I always throw there is the first one, which is they have to introduce themselves and their company and why they're here in 1 minute or less. Two of them are our sponsoring companies. You know, it is great to have QA that it really shows and puts their money and their time and where this matters in the space. And we also have, this is supported by Nominet, a partner with us who's worked on just about every one of our regional events in the early days and really now looking at areas like retraining. So Adam, you have the misfortune of being in the top left corner of my screen. So would you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, hi. Thanks very much, Debbie. My name is Adam Leach. As I said, I'm from Nominet. We're the company who runs the UK domain, over 12 million websites that end in .uk, and we run all of the infrastructure, tech infrastructure for that globally. I recently took up the job at CIO at Nominet, so took on a large tech team. My first job of running critical national infrastructure while in, you can't see it, but while in my loft stuck at home. So it's been an interesting couple of weeks. And yeah, I'm here to really learn how we can make a real significant difference in diversity in my team. So I've had experience of smaller tech teams and more diverse tech teams, and I kind of want to bring that to a kind of a broader perspective across the company.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Sue, you're working with us as a Tech Talent Charter, but you have a broader background as well. Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sue Mosley. So yeah, currently I'm working on a contract basis with Tech Talent Charter and Leeds City Council to help coordinate a mini ecosystem around Leeds of organisations working in collaboration with each other to kind of like create, you know, that learning around attracting tech talent through retraining programs or career returner programs. But I was asked to join this panel because of my previous experience. I worked for the BBC for just under 2 years, and the contract that I was working on was to help them improve their gender diversity across their design and engineering teams. So I was kind of like instrumental to launching their Step into Tech program and also their career returning program. We ran a flexible working campaign, so lots of different initiatives that I was working on to help them recruit female talent in this space.
Thanks. Claire, do you want to tell us about your background?
Hi everyone. So I retrained through a software development bootcamp called School of Code after having been on a 7-year maternal career break. I'm now 2.5 years into my tech career, and I'm B13 Technology. I'm the Associate Director there, and we're a bespoke software development consultancy, and our values and ethos lie in ensuring that digital innovation and disruption is available and accessible to all companies, small and large. I'm also a very active member of our local and regional tech community. I'm a board member on the local Digital Skills Partnership, and we've awarded £5 million to training providers regionally over the last 1.5 years to support the digital skills gap. And then I'm also a non-exec director for Birmingham Tech Week, which held its inaugural event last year. And we're hoping to really create that special community space where we can all collaborate with each other and ensure we're getting the most out of the tech industry in our region.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Claire. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, my name's Ben Sweetman. I'm Director of Content and Learning Design at QA. We're a big but still specialist tech training and education business, and so in the context of today, that kind of spans across everything from short courses of conversion to apprenticeships, consulting offers, and then a variety of, I guess, more bespoke things that we do for clients as well. So as well as higher education, so all sorts of things.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Chris, could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, hi there, everyone. I'm Chris Mear, so I run the School of Code, which is where Claire came through. So good to see her shining today. And yeah, we're a free coding bootcamp. So our ethos is, to help more and different types of people into tech. We do that through a 16-week bootcamp, which is completely free, no prerequisites. We take people from absolute scratch all the way through to professional developer and then help them into jobs. We've run 3 so far. We've got 90% plus employment from each one and attract a really wide range of people. So we've had thousands of applications and the distribution of that is a 50-50 gender split, age range of 18 to 60, demographics matching Birmingham, which is where we're based. So we've got a lot of experience in trying to see where the limits are in terms of, who can you take through and who can get through into tech and what are the barriers that exist. So hoping to learn a bit and help share our story today.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So we really have a panel that can talk about the whole journey from companies who are at the early stages, looking at organizations who have started bigger programs, and working and in partnership with companies to do that. One of the reasons I was so excited to have Claire on the panel, I came across Claire because she's going to be part of a campaign that will be launching in the autumn, looking at working age women. And what we were trying to find is people who could be role models, people who look like us, to understand about alternate routes in tech. So, I mean, Claire, you have gone from 0 to 100 miles per hour in such a short time. And on the call, I know there'll be a lot of us thinking, oh my God, how do we get a Claire? All right, so that's going to be kind of our framing device today on how can companies get a Claire? How do we get Claires in our company and working? So first of all, although you work in a tech company, I want you to give us that lens of the user. And, how did you go? I mean, you don't sound like someone who had woke up and from an early age was taking apart your parents' computer, etc. How did you find about it, and what brought you into that tech career?
So really, I think the important point to know here is that I wasn't looking for a career in tech. Where I was at in my life was I'd had a previous experience in a completely different industry, working all over the world. And then I'd taken a maternal career break and found it was my time to come back into the workforce. And so what I was looking for was a way of breaking back into any industry to find a rewarding and fulfilling career that I could do around my family. And I felt like I was hitting a brick wall. I felt there were so few opportunities for me. I felt like I was going to have to start all over again. And I didn't think I could juggle that along with the demands of family life. And so while I was looking for this golden egg opportunity, I looked at, should I do social media management from home? I was looking at some digital courses in that respect. And that was when the algorithms of Facebook worked their magic on me. And actually, I got a sponsored advert for the School of Code in Birmingham. And at this point, I'm still not thinking, oh, yes, I definitely want a career in tech. I just sort of read through the information and started thinking, right, okay, software development, coding, that feels like a new language. I've done languages at uni, I can do that. But the most important thing about it was that there were no barriers to trying it out. The application form was as simple as could be. There were no prerequisites for the course. So, like I like to say, I didn't even know what an HTML tag was when I was reading that advert. And it was completely free, which meant it was accessible for me, which many other courses weren't as I was looking at them. And importantly as well, it was 16 weeks. And I thought, you know what, I've got enough support from friends and family that I can do this for 4 months. That feels manageable and, the right amount of time for me to then get into the workforce without having to sort of drag on for years waiting, for something new to start. And so really I applied and got through. We did, interviews and team talking days, and, Chris will let you know what he likes to do is have nice people on the course. And it was just suddenly became obvious what a wonderful opportunity it was, and that opened my eyes then to the world of tech and software development and the opportunities that exist there, rather than them coming first and me looking for it.
Okay, so we're going to tease some of the strands of what happened there, both in terms of how a course was designed, what it required in terms of prerequisites, but then there's also that attraction piece, and how do we find people and remove the barriers to get them in the course. Let me throw it out to all of us. What are we seeing in the space? What do we have to have in a program? If I'm on the call, I'm in a company and I want to set something up internally, or I'm looking for a partner, what must be in an effective returners or retraining program? I'm throwing that out to all of you. Each of you give me one thing that you know needs to be part of that.
I think so when I worked at the BBC, it became apparent that with the biggest ingredient was that support. Those individuals needed to fit. So through the Career Returner program, those individuals needed to know that they had kind of like, you know, somebody to turn to. You know, if they have kind of like, they need that extra support. With the Step into Tech program, I think, you know, we ran that program, which is very similar, it sounds like, to the School of Code, but we did that in-house at the BBC, and we had an external provider come in and actually do the delivery of that training on an evening. But it became really, you know, really important that those individuals, because actually at the end of that tech training program, we wanted those individuals to feel that actually they'd be able to apply for a role, and actually, you know, an entry-level role in software engineering. So we wanted them to actually, once they'd completed that training, want to work at the BBC and apply for a role at the BBC. So we wanted them to feel right from the offset, as part of that training program, that they felt as though they were part of the BBC, even though they were all working full-time in different professions. They came in on an evening, and even though on an evening there was nobody around, we gave them a pass, an access pass to the BBC, so they could come in during the day if they wanted to and feel a part of the BBC and go work in teams and shadow in teams. So I think that you need to include them, make them feel part of it.
Okay, so it is much more than just building a how to code course. And I know, Chris, you've mentioned that before. This is much more than just a simple, this is how you use HTML.
Yeah, I think we fall into a trap sometimes of, you know, programmers love tech, and so they expect everyone else to love tech. And so if you ask a programmer to design a tech course, they're gonna lead it in a way that, you know, it's built for those people who have been taking apart computers since they were 6 years old. You know, my mum or dad bought me a ZX Spectrum and I was taking it, but like the same stories come through because those are the roots that are built. So I think the first thing is making sure it's like open to everyone, like remove as many barriers, but also make sure it's fun and engaging for everyone. You know, like you can learn to love this stuff and it is learnable. But having it in a really social, team-based environment, making it fun, making it engaging. I think if you really want to open it up and add value, that's probably a really important part that is overlooked. The curriculum curriculum's out there, right? Like the internet is a magical thing. That's why tech's great. You can learn whatever you want, but it doesn't stop people not being able to do it. There's a big gap between, you know, the curriculum and getting to a place where you can get a job. And so I think that's really where we should not forget, which is often overlooked.
Yeah, it's easy to really get obsessed on what tools or languages you're teaching, when it's much more. Ben, do you want to build on that?
I think it is, and I like what Chris was saying, because it's also then the bit about the role design. You know, in the tech industry, we've always had this thing that our overwhelming thing is recruit people who can already code and can sort of do the whole job straight away, plug them in, off they go. Whereas actually thinking about how do you, particularly with developer and maybe data roles, is going, how do we redesign the role for the early phases of this, so it makes it easier for people to plug in and do something useful straight away without having to think I'm straight away being the developer, just like someone who's been doing it for 5 to 10 years. So I think the curriculum plus that kind of how do we design the first 3 to 6 months of role is as important as teaching. And I think there's a temptation to try and the oven model that Chris managed. You do it all in the boot camp, and then magically pops out of it is a person ready to go.
And I remember
actually the transition is really important.
Sorry, Debbie.
Adam, yeah, because it links really
Adam.
into what you were going to talk about, Adam, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just going to build on what Ben said, really. So when we've had success with returners in one of the previous teams I was managing, it was kind of making space for that we wanted more the junior role, that we knew that what we wanted from a skills perspective was someone that didn't have 5 years or 3 years experience, and we had the space we knew we wanted to bring someone on and train them. So creating that space in the organization was a key point for the success that we had with the returner. We didn't have a fixed program, and we ended up having a returner that sort of by happy accident, really, but it worked well because we were looking for that, made that space in the organisation for that more junior, less experienced role.
And that's really important. I hear this again and again from all of you. We have to abandon, this is not just a repurposed grad program. This is not, we have to design the role first. And we have to give that role space, and it's thinking beyond the 6 weeks, thinking beyond the 16 weeks. And then what happens next, and then what happens next. Okay, so we designed a role. We created the space in the organization, in the minds of our teams internally about starting to do it. We're putting together a program. What do I have to keep in that program, or are there any pitfalls I should avoid? So this is where you're also going to talk about some stuff that didn't work, but what do I need to make sure? So I'm going to choose and take some careful decisions about what languages I might teach or tools, but what else am I putting in those 16 weeks or that 3-month course?
We, as part of the Step into Tech program at the BBC, we actually included towards the latter end of the program elements around that professional development, and provided kind of like, interview advice, how to put together a CV. So, and the group of those 16 women found that extremely useful to help them apply for a role at the BBC or other organisations, because at the end of the programme, 14 of the 16 women became software engineers, entry-level software engineers, and 3 of them work for other organisations and not the BBC. So I think that element of that kind of like professional support was really, really important to that group.
Super. And Chris, you talked about that as well, and Claire was talking about it. There's a lot around soft skills that need to happen as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess it's that transition from what tech used to be in the stereotype to what tech means today. And today, tech is a team sport, really. There's to be in a high performance technical team is a really specific set of skills. They aren't taught at university. It's a very specific set of skills that we need to hone in on. And welcoming more and different types of people in actually embeds those soft skills. So, all through education, we are spoiled because we're in a comfort zone. You speak to people like you. Everyone's the same age. Even if you don't look like you're the same age from the same area. Your parents do similar types of jobs, and so you never really have to like challenge yourself or get soft skills. But if you put a return to work mum next to a school leaver, next to like a PhD in chemistry, next to an unemployed person, you're going to have to clash. And if you're working on a project, you're going to learn soft skills really, really keenly. So doing that in a tech-driven environment is key to getting an effective team player out of the other end, I think.
I've had a question come up from the audience I think is really pertinent. There's a pre-COVID world. I hate using the C word on calls these days, but there before then, this was all done face to face. How much have you been able to keep things going in this lockdown world? Can we see a world in which there's more online or blended? What are you seeing, Ben and Chris, particularly in that space?
Yes, I mean we've definitely. I mean we had the kind of very immediate switch over thing, which I think is one bit. But what we've now started is much more is that blended experience. So how do we pull together more of that online labs? How do you create a realistic practice environment that doesn't need so much supervision? So we take away the idea that you're constantly the only place learning happens is inside the glass box of a classroom, to actually it's more about creating a journey map that mixes in the different types of learning, the supervision, and particularly I think what we found with the new bits is what happens when you get stuck. So how do you put your hand up and say, can you help me, has been incredibly useful. I think particularly with our apprentices, who were finding, if anything, are progressing a bit faster than they were before, probably.
Interesting.
And definitely the ability to have online chat to say, I'm stuck, can you help me right now, as opposed to sort of suffering in silence for a couple of hours, has been huge kind of part of that move to
Chris,
blended.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, how have you pivoted in COVID?
Yeah, so COVID hit halfway through our last boot camp. So the first 8 weeks were in person, and then like overnight we sort of switched it, and the last 8 weeks were remote. And everyone in tech knows, I mean, this is part of the benefit of tech, right? Like, you're really not affected in your day-to-day how you execute your job or your role. That's part of why, tech's going to be the engine of recovery for the economy, right? Like, we can really ramp up and carry on. I guess the difference for me is I sort of see office and classrooms going in a similar way to the high street. So the high street, used to be for shopping, I guess, and now it's really experiences. You go there and it's about the experience, coffee shops and the in-store experience. I think classrooms and offices are going to be the same, and it's going to be very specific, strategic pieces of experience that you want to gel a team together, or really share an experience together. Like Ben said, the rest of delivery, actually, the people that we were training up, they're now ready to work remotely in a team, because that's what they've done. They've worked in teams for, the last 8 weeks delivering projects remotely. So there's benefits. You can scale up much easier, and benefits there. But gelling those teams together is generally always done, with a hint of in-person interaction at some point. So I think that's how we'll be blended.
Because we're not really in a flexible environment right now. We've all been forced into sales, but a blended piece is going to become quite exciting. I wanted to, does anyone else want to jump? I think, Claire, you wanted to say something on that, and then I've got some questions from the audience.
Yeah, I just wanted to say really about the course and how you pivot now is so important, because, it's not just about the technical skills on these courses. That was sort of almost the springboard for me, learning JavaScript. But what was really key throughout that as well was the personal development that we all experienced. And like Chris said, being thrown into a classroom with a very diverse range of people. I'd only been meeting, sort of moms and dads at playgroup for God knows how long. And suddenly I was in the whole world. And, that helped me sort of unearth a lot of soft skills and confidence and stuff that I had been lacking in, having had a break. And it's highlighted to me as well, not only what I was learning in new technical skills, and giving me the skills then to sort of go out in the world and be taught more and different types of technical skills in whatever role I landed in. But the really key piece, and the bit that's accelerated me really fast now, was that personal development, the team building, the people I was exposed to, the networks, the industry, and that really immersive side of the course, which is as important as the technical.
And I'm really glad you said it, because and Chris, you've mentioned that if it's just about teaching people to code, there's lots out there that would have already solved the problem. It's got to be that bigger piece. Adam, now you were leaning forward. Did you want to jump in?
I just wanted to mention something that I thought was really important in the success that we had with the returner was that so returners are different from kind of apprentices, is that they have this experience that they've done in other careers and other professions. So actually spending some time to understand what that was in part of how they sold themselves, I think is really important, because they do the training and they learn new skills, but they have skills already from the workplace, which I think can really add value to employers. So when they're selling themselves to employers, that making sure they bring that to the table when they're going through interviews, I think that's a really important.
And that's gone beautifully. I mean, you beautifully segued it, Adam, into a question I had from the audience, which is a tricky one, which is thinking about, when we have so little information, when we're looking at people from really diverse backgrounds, what are the questions we're asking? How are we deciding if somebody is a good fit for a retraining, a returner, a career conversion? Can everyone jump in? And, what do you bring and what do you ask, or what are you looking for that tells you, get that person, that's the person who wants to do it?
So from our point of view, really as an employer, if you talk to employers, everyone will always say like, we'll hire for the right attitude and the right motivation, and that's great. But there's a level of skills that's needed for that to be actually, feasible. And so I think for employers, that's often swapped in for experience, because that's as close as we can get to measuring that aptitude and that, how good are you at the job? Have you done it for 2 years? So I think really what we need to be hiring for, if you do want to open this up, is skills and learning trajectory. So how quickly have they learned? How much have they learned? What is the trajectory of their learning? I think even doing that minor change, that minor mindset shift, will open up the door to many, many more people. Because I don't think there is a limit to like who should come into tech, or now it's much more than just like sitting on your own in a basement, like we've all seen in like Hollywood movies, like coding away. Code is the common language there that allows teams to function, but there's dev adjacent roles like QA, project manager. There's tons of roles, and every strength you've got as a personality trait can be input into one of those roles really effectively, but you do need to understand how software is put together to be more effective in that role.
Adam, did you want to add to that?
No, when I was just nodding in agreement, I was also...
All right, good. I couldn't tell if that was a leaning forward, poised
no,
to say
also
something,
just reflecting on my time that I've spent in a basement as well. So it's just...
Ben, let me throw one other question, and then what I think I'll do is I'm going to read out a few of the other questions. I'm going to put you out in the breakout rooms. You can feel free to dig into those. The other question that came up that was interesting is, we have all of us on the call mentioned apprenticeships, we've mentioned returners, and we've mentioned retraining. Talk to me how these three things fit in the space, and if I'm an employer, what might draw me to one more than the other, knowing that there's no single answer. But if I say to you across the piece, what would you say is the difference between those, and why might I go for one rather than the other in the space?
I think
so for me,
employer, sorry, Ben. As an employer, sometimes sometimes I think you need additional things around to support perhaps a returner, as you mentioned in your slides at the beginning about flexibility and agility in the way you organize. So perhaps an apprentice is something you may go for if you're feeling not as brave to change some of those other things and you want someone to fit in with what's there and existing.
So apprenticeships as the gateway drug to inclusion and diversity. Okay, we won't quote that and socialize that.
It's certainly the support that I think Claire mentioned before. It's just making sure the support is there for whichever of those that you turn to bring on.
Okay. Ben, did you want to build on that?
Yeah, and I think partly because we do varieties of three, it's sort of seeing the distance. What's your destination point and what's the starting point of the people? And is the distance sort of something you can bear without it being so thing that's not worth it? But and I think increasingly starting to break apprenticeships out of being age specific is helpful as well. So realizing that particularly now, lots of people coming out of industries that are not adjacent to tech really at all, actually take the age bit out of it going could really benefit from what an apprenticeship has to offer, because we talk about this very pedagogy nerdy, that it's a far transfer. There's quite a long way to go, and apprenticeships are good at doing big transfer stuff with people that have not so much kind of starting point, as opposed to maybe the returners that we just talked about, where actually lots of relevant similar work experience means the jump's manageable. Apprenticeships, I think, are good where it's a bigger jump.
Good. And Chris, do you want to add anything? And then I'm going to sort of put us into, I would say, for anyone that are asking these sorts of questions, Anna has put a link there. Please know that we have retraining materials, some of which have been contributed to from people on the call, that you can really start digging into those things. And it is that idea that you're hearing from. There is no single magic bullet. For some people, the apprenticeship is the first place to start. For others, you want to start with the returners piece. But Chris, what would be your take on that space and the different ways of getting people into tech?
Yeah, I guess rather than just repeating the points that have been said, if I was comparing it to like a grad scheme, so for me, grad schemes are really good for larger companies where you can use universities as sort of this filtering system. and you say, okay, I'm going to stick you into this grad scheme for 2 years, and then after 2 years, you know, you'll be able to add value to me. Most businesses are like day-to-day focused on survival. If you've not got that 10-year strategy luxury. And so I think you need people adding value from month one. And so that for me is why that really intensive training, that immersive training needs to happen up front. A, to give people confidence, but also B, to get them to the skill level where they can, you know, there'll be a lot of holes there, but you know, you have to support any new starter, like especially in tech. If you've got a senior engineer isn't going to get up and running from day one. They need to embed into your team cultures and practices and how you do things. So, you know, tech teams are usually good at that support nature, but don't know where to look for opening up the doors to more than just like, you've got this experience. So I think that's why we sort of err on the side of immersive courses up front, because you can just go in and add value to companies, and that's what they need.
And it does also add the question in a company, whenever we are talking about retraining and career conversion, we always picture that somebody outside our company. It's really worth some companies looking internally and seeing where a career conversion internally could be really valuable. One of my favorite stories was one from BT talking about when they did retraining schemes, they got a woman who had for 10 years run one of their call centers and who retrained to be part of the team developing their chatbot. Well, think about the depth of experience that was going to go into that build team once they'd tech that woman up. Okay, so home stretch, guys. You got to know I pride myself when I say we're ending by quarter past. By God, we're going out at quarter past. From my facilitators, were there any big questions, ideas, problems that were surfacing amongst your group? Hi, Tracy.
Hello. Yeah, we had Chris in the room, School of Code, and then Katie and Jade, and we discussed, and Hayley, and we discussed around how it was really helpful that School of Code is available for SMEs, in the sense that you can train up individuals where SMEs don't have that luxury and resources for graduate and apprenticeship schemes that they can run themselves. So we definitely see the value add there. But linked to that, it's about then spreading it across the country.
Yeah.
So that it is a scheme that other parts of the country can actually benefit from, because we really appreciate that it is not a filtering system, but it is a way of improving social mobility and training up in the sense that it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
I think that linked to that, comment was made with Katie as well around how it's really important, therefore, to advertise in spaces that are not in our little bubble.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And spread the word.
And I think that's going to be something really interesting. I'm going to again drop some little breadcrumbs of something. So Tech Talent Charter is going to be launching a campaign in the autumn that is aimed primarily at women, but we're looking at the whole intersectionality of that space of women, highlighting the role models, including Claire, of roots into tech. And we're not going to be doing that just on LinkedIn. This is going to go out on Instagram. This is going to go out on Facebook. We're going to be looking at we need to get our heads around that as companies, don't we? We can't just keep going to the same places and expect different people to be there. And we can't expect people to find us. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and thinking you're going to get different outcomes. And so we're going to have to start being in different spaces. What about some of the other groups? Does anyone else from my facilitators want to share something that came through? Lexi.
I can jump in. Yeah. So our group had a really interesting conversation about how to, before you even start running your alternative routes into tech, how do you find and connect with groups of people so you don't just get inundated with huge volume of applications, but actually the diversity of that pool is not great. And one of the key questions that I'd love to throw out, if anyone has resources they can share, are there ways to connect with these communities without having to go necessarily through a fee-paying service? Because obviously there are lots of constraints around budget and funding at the moment. And are there any kind of starters for 10 about how to connect with those organisations if you're doing it internally under a kind of a tight budget?
And one of the things I would say, we are by no means exhaustive, but you'll remember in the toolkit that was listed, we did talk about a directory. And what we have been trying to do in the directory is to capture who these groups, who these providers are. That is one piece of that puzzle, but there's still so much to be done. So that's a good takeaway for us to go away and think as the charter on how could we assist on making that easier to connect between those groups. Anything else, Nat?
Yeah, hi.
Hi,
so
yeah.
there was a couple of things that I thought I'd mention. There was one interesting point around the high unemployment levels that have been taking place because of COVID-19. So there's obviously this huge number of talented people who, by no fault of their own, are now looking for a new position. And I think we were kind of discussing, like, how do there's a big issue around how people that are not currently in the tech industry, how do you actually reach out to them and help them understand that a career in technology would actually be something that they could see themselves in? So it feels like there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Absolutely.
It's probably kind of even at government level, I would say.
And if I say to you, do remember, we do work with government. And we were actually asked to put together some presentations into BAIS, the department that would look across that piece. And this is one of the things we talked about. So those stats I showed you were all pre-COVID. We now know there's huge displacement of people in the workforce, and a lot of people who have woke up and realized that even if they still have a job, that industry isn't as secure as they'd like. We do know that COVID and redundancies has impacted women more than the other groups. And so, yes, that's why we're saying from the autumn, and we'll encourage everyone who's signatories, but everyone else, this is something that we want to go viral. And it is going to about, if you see Claire and the other women we have in the campaign, we have people from everywhere in the country of every age, ethnicity, we have LGBTQ mental. We have a group of women who really show the sheer breadth and depth of opportunity of getting into tech. And so we'll hope to do that. And then it is to signpost into companies and organizations like yourself. So that's just one of those, stay tuned, but absolutely. So yes, but do all of you through your avenues, continue to say to government that this is, if they get in front of it, a huge opportunity of taking those people who are out of work, helping convert that, and to fill those gaps that have always been in tech. And it becomes a moral imperative, and not to do it is to really just hasten a decline we need to avoid. And it is avoidable if we can get that to work. So yes, if you've never done it before, this is the time to do it. If you ever wanted to think about returners, retraining, etc., this is the time. Get ready for the autumn, because people are looking around. And it is, remember, not just looking at the same places and at the same grad fairs and advertising in the same things. This is getting out of our comfort zone, going and finding where they are. Join with us, anything we can do as the charter to help. Are there any other big questions or issues before I wind us up and send us out? I have 4 minutes. I have a big red timer coming up for me. All right, so.
I think that opportunity piece where we are COVID-19, it's like, right, lots of people need to retrain. We've got all these things available. I think it's, people like, everyone who's come together today wants to talk about it, wants to shout about it. And we're the ones that can actually say, right, let's disrupt something here. Let's make it happen.
I love that.
There are then links into government where we can talk about that in a broader spectrum. We all know how slow that and cumbersome that can be. So it's going to take lots of voices coming together to sort of make that loud and proud. I really enjoyed a piece Chris wrote this week about how we can really escalate that training and learning and make the most of this opportunity, because it'd be great for government, won't it? It will boost the economy if we can throw out 10 School of Codes for the rest of the year, for our just that. What would that do for us as an industry as a whole, and then as a country as a whole at this time? So
I always use the mantra back when we first set up the Tech Talent Charter. If you remember 2017, when we set out in this space, that was the year of gender pay reporting, Harvey Weinstein, Me Too, and we took as our mantra Churchill's never waste a good crisis. We've got a good crisis, and we've no intention. So I really, Claire, thank you for giving us that closing idea. This is about disrupting. This is about, and this is, we can't wait for government to do it. We got to urge them to catch up while we set out in the space to do that. So it's been another great event. So much to talk about, never enough time. I love the expertise and the enthusiasm on our panel, but also in those breakout rooms. We've known for a while that this retraining returners piece is crucial. It in the past was the one game-changing way that companies could get access to great talent and diverse talent to really make a difference. We now know, as COVID is coming through, this is game changer, not just for the companies, but for the UK as a whole. There's a huge number of people who are being displaced from their jobs or aware that their jobs aren't as secure as they'd like. We also know there's going to be even greater talent shortage for tech because companies are realizing digital is the way to be safe, to thrive going forward. Lots to do. There's a number of routes to do this. There are companies, you don't have to start from square one. You can benefit from other people, other organizations. Look at our open playbook. Think about what's been on that too and what you're learning and finding. Come to our directories to see other organizations that you could be working with. But it is really taking the challenge that Claire threw down to all of us. And we all want a Claire in our organization. How can we today start getting our companies thinking about how retraining, returners, apprenticeships, those alternate routes into tech really be the game-changing piece that gives us that talent we need to transform our companies and get everybody back on their feet. Thank you for coming. Thanks to my sponsors. First of all, thank you to QA, who've sponsored 2 events on retraining, really putting their money where their mouth is and really raising the quality of debate and discussion on these things. Thanks again to Nominet. You know, you've been sponsors with us since the earliest days of the Tech Talent Charter, really looking at how to help the whole of the sector become more diverse and inclusive. So hopefully this is not the last time that we talk with you. If you've not had a chance to join the Tech Talent Charter, resistance is futile. You might as well give up and join us. If you're on the call, you probably already get it. We're free. We'd love to have you on board. If you are already on board, find another way. Join us for another discussion, a hack day. But there's so much going on right now. It's a crazy world. Time is valuable. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today to be part of the discussion. Thanks very much. Bye.
QA is delighted to support Tech Talent Charter's working lunches. We're all about powering potential in the tech industry. We're passionate about bringing more people into tech from diverse backgrounds, and we'd love to help you start your retraining journey with us.